Hey, it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalvani. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode number 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated accounting mumbo-jumbo using a simple system. Your accountant is busy documenting your transactions and creating a rearview mirror of what happened. My guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this, and it's not your fault. We aren't taught money in school, and accountants aren't taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equals expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue does not equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. This episode of the Profit Answer Man podcast is brought to you by SMBpodcastnetwork.com. The network is a collection of podcasts and shows from around the internet which focus on bringing you interviews with amazing guests who share actionable advice, ideas, and information for small and medium-sized business owners and entrepreneurs. Visit www.smbpodcastnetwork.com to find more great shows and easily subscribe to be notified of new episodes. It's a great way to discover quality content. If you've discovered us via the network, then I hope you enjoy today's show and will consider subscribing directly so you never miss our episodes. Big news. We realize that we are not able to help every business, but they still need help, and that's why we are creating the Profit First Experience, a course that includes different levels of support and an upcoming community to focus on helping you to be more profitable. If you're interested in learning more, please use the link in the show notes to sign up to be notified when it launches and to secure the pre-launch special pricing. Today, our focus is on marketing. We all know we need marketing, but marketing can be expensive. And more important, we need to be able to measure the results to see what our return on spending is. Sure, you can spend $1 on marketing and get $5 in sales, but if you have a 10% profit margin, you just lost 50 cents by implementing that new marketing program and worked a bunch and got nothing in return. It's imperative to know the numbers and measure results. The other problem we face is that marketers are good at marketing to us, and so we get excited by more sales. But will they really deliver? We need to make sure that we have a plan in place to make sure that they do. That's our topic today with AJ Rivera, who is the founder of Blink Media consulting firm that provides businesses with executive-level guidance, strategy, and leadership for their marketing teams. Let's meet AJ. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, AJ Rivera. It's great to have you join us today.
Rocky, I am very honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
And I am honored by your presence. Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
Yes. So my name is AJ Rivera. I'm the founder of Blink Media Co. We're a consulting firm that builds out marketing strategies for small business owners that are not reactive, but are built to generate outcomes and generate measurable results for our business owner clients. And I love it.
It's always good to do what you love.
That's what I hear. Yeah, that's what I hear.
You know, the funny thing is, though, I talk to a lot of business owners and they do what they love. And the one thing they don't love is accounting.
Yes.
And we chatted a little bit about that before we hit record. How do you do the kind of the financial side within your business, or what do you wish was kind of more possible within your business?
I mentioned it a little bit before, but when I started in business, I've owned a lot of different companies. I've owned wellness centers. I did a lot in the consulting and agency world for fitness and wellness. That's kind of how I got into this world of marketing. And one of the things that I really wish I would have done is brought on like accounting and or like an outsourced CFO from day one. It's legitimately one of my biggest regrets. And I'm not just like trying to like fluff you or whatever. Like I'm legitimate, like it's a huge regret because I was, in my 20s making money and I'm just like, oh, I'm going to buy this and that. And I really wish I had somebody who would have smacked me around a little and told me, hey, you can make this money work for you if you aren't such a dum-dum with it. So yeah.
So was it just basically accountability that you were looking for, or just help in making wiser decisions?
It was, I would say, both, honestly. I think the benefit, I didn't know what an outsourced CFO was back then. I always thought it was either just like an accountant or a full-time CFO. And as a growing small business, I was like, well, I can't afford a CFO. So I guess I'll just have like a bookkeeper, accountant, and that'll have to do, right? But it doesn't do because it wasn't everything I needed for where my business was at the time. And it didn't set me up for long-term success.
What did you feel like you were missing?
Like restraints, I would say, like somebody to tell me like that I'm making the right choice or that this is a wrong choice to make. Somebody who could kind of bounce back from my reactive at the time, impulsive entrepreneur, young, somebody who could say, hey, okay, so that's a great idea, but let's see what the numbers say, right? And let's look at things like the profit of your actual customers you're acquiring. And hey, you could be making more profit from your customers if you improved your product this much. You would spit out this much more profit on the back.
And hang on, when you said this much, you had your fingers up, which people can't see, and it was just a teeny little bit of change. And that's what I think people don't realize. Teeny little bits of change can have massive results in profit. But go ahead and continue.
No. I appreciate that because it's true. There are small changes that we improved in our product when we were in the agency world, and that we noticed our lifetime value, meaning like all the revenue we generate from one customer doubled by improving this by a little bit, which you can't see my hands, but it's so small. It's tiny violin size. So those things really add up, but they're not as fun or sexy. So people often ignore them. Certainly marketing people. So yeah.
When I think of marketing people, I think of creatives. Mm-hmm. And when I think of creatives and money, I think of oil and water. They just don't mix.
Yeah.
And so I think, as a business owner, you have to look at yourself and say, who am I and what am I good at? And what seats am I best sitting in? What hats should I wear? And then where do I need to find somebody to sit in another seat and put on a hat? So don't ask me to do marketing. Like, that's not my thing. Right. But I know enough about marketing to go, you're telling me you're going to spend money on that? I can't see how that's possibly going to work. So why don't we test it first before you throw a whole large pile of money in? And let's come up with two things. How do we measure return? And then two, how long till we rip the Band-Aid off? Like, how long are we going to let this bleed out without making a change? And that's what I find for a lot of my clients. They need to spend the time. They need to actually understand their marketing. And we're going to get into that. Like, how do we make sure that it's profitable? Because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Anything else on the finance side before we switch over?
No, I think that's a good segue. And we can talk about the measuring of success of campaigns, because I think that's super important.
And so one of the things you mentioned earlier is in the marketing world, people sell air, and I think in the software world, right, people, they call it vaporware. They make all these promises for what the software is going to deliver. It doesn't. Marketing world says spend all this money and we'll get you all these sales. And yet most of my business owners don't always see good results. So how do we change that? How do we get value, and how do we appropriately do marketing to be able to get more clients and more profits?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's an important one, because I think a lot of times with marketing, especially small business owners, is they're being hammered by marketers and agencies and consultants who are kind of trying to sell them one thing will fix everything, right? And so they're getting them while they're maybe in a little bit of stress, maybe they're nervous, maybe they got some FOMO. Oh, what opportunities am I missing out on? TikTok, what should I be doing over there, right? Whatever the next thing will be. And that's not to say those things aren't useful at all. It's to say that you need to be non-reactive when you are marketing. You need to be intentional, like you said, and know, when am I going to pull the Band-Aid? Like, what am I going to test? How much? What's my expectation? What are the success indicators, right? How do I know this is working? Or what are the failure indicators? How do I know this is failing and when I should stop? And I think managing that expectation is very important with marketing. And it's not the sexy thing in the internet marketing world to say that, but in the big boy marketing world, and big girl and big person, that's how it is. You make a plan, you set up and like what your estimated ROI and budget is before you start, and then you set those kind of like safeguards in place.
And so for the small person, just so that they have clarity, how quickly can you know if something's working?
So it depends on the way you're marketing. And I'm not going to work around it. I'll give you tangibles as well. But it really does depend. So for instance, a podcast, right, like we're doing right now, has a longer like cycle that you have to like measure the return on investment. And there's some of it that will be unmeasurable. I call it like invisible ROI, right? That it's going to be hard to quantify, but the stuff that we can measure, we should. And when it comes to things that are very direct, like media buying, pay-per-click, ads, right? You should be able to know what's working and what's not working pretty quickly, given you have a budget that allows you to. And I'm not talking about like tens of thousands. I'm talking about couple hundred to maybe a couple thousand a month, but something reasonable for you to get enough data so you can make an informed decision and not an impulsive one.
Let's get granular. Local service business services a local mid-sized city and wants to do some online advertising. How much do they need to put out to test before they realize, hey, this is or isn't working?
Yeah, it depends on who, but most local service-based businesses, accountants, plumbers, roofers, gyms, they should be like, to be safe on the highest high, around $1,000 to $1,500 a month, plus whatever they got to pay, their person to do it. So whether they're hiring an agency or a freelancer, I'd strongly advise hiring a freelancer for small business owners, to be frank, just because you're getting more bang for your buck and you're getting somebody who specializes, though there are agencies who can sometimes support. But yeah, that's where I would mess around with some data. And it depends on where you're spending, but the most places you're going to want to start is Google advertising and Facebook advertising, which of course encompasses YouTube and Instagram, right? Instagram's owned by Facebook, YouTube is owned by Google. But I would mess around with those first because you're going to get the fastest data.
Does Facebook still work well in light of all the changes that have happened with Apple and tracking and targeting and so forth? For what kind of sales is it best?
Yeah, I would say it is still working. Unfortunately, for small business owners, there was a nice little Goldilocks period for a while where you could kind of throw anything up and it would work. And I know that sounds like hyperbole, but that's kind of the case. Like, you could, 10 years ago, I used to be able to, I used to own fitness and wellness centers. We would spend $10 a day on ads, 10, which is really low. And we get like 20 to 30 interested prospects a day from that. And there's just no way that's going to happen now. Like you're just not, it's not underpriced, like, or as underpriced as it was. And it's the market is starting to shift to the point where even like media like radio and television is starting to dip down and meet digital media like Facebook and Google. So it does still work, but you have to, I would advise you don't play around with it too much yourself, unless you're you're learning from an expert and like a legitimate expert, like somebody who's doing it for their own business, does it for other clients. So yeah, it does work, but you have to be cautious now because it's not as wide open as it used to be.
Lots more competition, lots more algorithms and changing algorithms. You know, speaking of price points going down, the one thing that's kind of popped up recently is going back to postcards.
Mm-hmm.
Because with a postcard, you can direct mail a very tight geography. So if your particular clients are upper scale or middle class, like you can go down and figure out by street, by the data and target. And it doesn't cost you that much to send a postcard these days. It's printed postcards are what, under $1 practically?
Yeah. Even cheaper.
Even cheaper. So think about that. And the one thing I like about postcards is people get them, and if they're somewhat interested, they keep them. Like I know I keep mine. If they've got a coupon, even though I'm not sure, maybe I'll use this coupon, I stick it up on the fridge. And so it becomes a long-lasting reminder. And then when I'm ready, then I call them and I buy. So I think people need to not get dazzled by I need to be online per se. I mean, you do need to be online. You do need a website. You do need an easy way for people to connect with you. I think in today's world, being able to auto schedule appointments, being able to see pricing, being able to chat or get instant support 24/7 is helpful. But at the same point, old school postcards work. Now, I'm not going to tell you to go to the yellow pages because I think everyone throws those right in the garbage if they ever show up.
Yes. No, but you're super right. So like one of my main clients is I think I said this already, but it's like, I'm just saying it to add validity to what you just said. They're a $200 million recruiting agency that's been around for like 40 years, right? And one of their best marketing strategies is promotional products, direct mail. Right? So it's direct mail and promotional products. And the ways we've sort of helped marry that with online is things like QR codes where you can immediately schedule. And then you can start tracking some of that ROI as well on promotional products. Yeah.
And so I think that because that's where my business owners are like, well, how do I know where it came from? I'm like, well, a couple things, use different coupon codes. Every postcard's got a different coupon code. So the coupon code immediately tells you where it came from. If you've got QR codes, you have multiple QR codes. Each QR code tells you this is what drove this interaction. So now we get back to that measurement space and being able to do that. Now, if it's all happening online, I'm sure there's multiple tools that can actually track and capture, but then people have to know how to read the data, which is where I think people struggle.
No, you're right in that it's hard to read the data. And like a lot of these tools are not necessarily accessible to a starting small business unless they have like a lot of funding to get started. And honestly, they're not necessary. Like when you're just starting, like you want to do the best you can with your spreadsheets, like do the best you can with a paper and pencil, but just track what you're doing. And then as your business grows, implementing automation tools and more robust data management and data analysis tools will help a lot. But like, let's not put the cart before the horse here. You're just seeing if this horse can even run, you know?
And it's funny because we just recently had a conversation around implementing a CRM system. Mm-hmm. And what I've noticed with some of these CRM systems is they start off free. And then when you blink your eyes, you're at $2,000 a month.
Yep.
And once you're in, you're locked in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very difficult to bring about change. And so what I suggest to people is think about the end and then work backwards and see what you can do. And don't be so stuck on one particular program, because it may cost you more than you want.
No, you're right, especially with the CRMs. There are like the best CRMs are, like you said, like maybe start at 800-900 a month to several thousand. And the more lists, right, the more contacts you have, the more expensive it becomes. And the more users, the more expensive it becomes. And those things are great solutions once your business is up and running, profitable, and like, let's say you want to keep scaling and growing it. That might be something that's necessary. But for a small startup, you don't want to go bankrupt on a customer relationship manager. You want like get the cheapest, most derpy CRM you can, and know it's not a permanent solution. So you don't have to even invest all your energy or time into it. Get, like you said, start with the end in mind. What's my goal with this? Oh, just to book calls? Great. Let's make sure it does that, and everything else, who cares, right? For right now.
And that's the important thing. I think it also depends on the type of business you are. And again, it comes back to lifetime value of a customer. Is it somebody who buys once and done? Is it somebody who buys every month? Is it somebody who buys once a year? What does your customer frequency look like? Because then that tells me how many touch points I need to keep in between to keep that client engaged and then remind them when it's time again to do something. So if you're a pool service company, you know, they're going to sign up maybe in the fall, and then they booked you for the spring, and then you don't have to think about it anymore. You don't need to keep reminding them in that interim period. Whereas some companies are just on demand. Something breaks and then they come out. So all of that plays into it. So I think you've really got to understand your clients and what they need, and then how best to keep them informed. I think one of the things that's kind of gotten a little crazy these days is email marketing, because I think everyone gets 100 emails and nobody reads any of them. And half of them now end up in spam before anyone even sees them. Thoughts are, what do we do with all of that?
The thoughts on, I mean, I love a lot of what you said. I think I'd love email for sure is something that is still profitable and working, even though it is annoying. You got to make sure you're not ending up in spam folders or promotion folders. You have to have things like a dedicated IP eventually. You have to make sure you're following all the rules, no spammy sends. And yeah, I mean, it's something that is still worth using for sure. When we're talking about, you know, the CRM, to kind of go back to that for just 1 second, I think another use case that we've seen it be very important is in B2B business operations, where like it takes longer, like time to sale is 6 months, 8 months, right? A year. Then having a CRM and even investing in one may be more worth it, right? Because you now know you need to follow up with somebody 5 times before they buy anything. If you're selling coffee, not so much, right? If you're selling, you know, gym services, not as much. You know, people either like your gym or they don't. People either like your coffee or they don't. So yeah.
You also need a system that your people are going to use. So when I was in corporate America, we had sales CRMs. Nobody used them. Like they used them, but they didn't use them. They put in whatever they needed to manage a metric that they were held to, but nobody actually used them in the way that they were best designed to be used. And there's a million reasons behind that we don't need to go into, but I think it's making sure that it fits your culture and your needs and what's going on within your business. So one of the things you talked about is non-reactive marketing, which is we don't go, oh my God, sales are down. Let me throw some ads out or do something or make phone calls. It's actually planning out a marketing plan for, and how long would you say? 3 months, 6 months, the entire year?
Yeah, I generally like to start with 90 days just because that matches up with the quarters, and then have soft year-end outcomes, right? So 1 year outcomes that are susceptible to change depending on the market, depending on, we realize we need to improve fulfillment of our product. We need an outsourced CFO. Let's pause everything to make sure we don't waste all our money, right? Things along those lines. So yeah, I think it's surprising to me the amount of small business owners who I'm like, okay, we're going to, start running your marketing now. And they're like, okay, when's the ad going live? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, why do you think you need an ad live on day one? Like, I understand that you may, right? If you already have ads up, cool, we'll get those managed right away. But if you're just starting to market your product to maybe colder audiences, I think one of the worst things you can do is be impulsive and reactive and throw stuff on the wall and see what sticks. And unfortunately, that's a little bit what's been hammered into a lot of small business owners, because other marketers want to sell you their solution. And it may be a fine solution, but like it may not be the right solution for them. And so sometimes you get like square peg, round hole when you really need to just go get a different peg for the person, right? For the business, a little bit more bespoke.
So how does a small business owner figure that? They're not marketing experts. How do they know if they're getting a square peg for their round hole?
Yeah, I would say that's a good question. So I would look at I know this is going to sound, I don't want it to sound like a woo, but like look at how your marketer or agency or advisor is approaching your marketing. If they're very impulsive or very top line revenue driven, you might be in trouble. Like top line revenue is great, but you as a profit first guy know that's not everything. And that's not the full story. And sure, it's impressive for the ads, right? But what's more impressive is how much can you pocket, right? How much can you put, how happy are your customers? How much longevity does your business have? How much longevity does your marketing have, right? One of the like poor examples that I'll give, and you can edit it out if it's horrible, is, I could if you needed to make a bunch of money right now, I could tell you to do a garage sale and sell everything in your house, including your car. You make a bunch of money, but then you don't have a car to go to work, right? So that, sure, my advice would have made you a bunch of money. That doesn't mean it was good for you or your business.
And you have to figure out what's appropriate, which isn't easy because marketers are good at marketing you.
Yes, they are.
And so I think it's testing and trying. And the other thing that I have found is you have to find out who's actually going to be on your account. Because if you're working with even a small organization, while the person who's selling you is one person, who's actually working on your account and how capable are they? How new are they? The question that's been coming up, I hear lately, is business owners are asking, what's your employee turnover like this year? Because if the marketing agency has just turned over 6 people, what's the quality, and are they up to speed yet? And do they understand the systems and processes? And so just because everyone's hopping jobs and so forth, it's, what worked for them 2 years ago may not be the case today, and you don't want to waste your money. So I think it's really taking the time to investigate and to do that. One of the things that, let's talk a little bit kind of about the future. And you talked about demand generation versus lead generation. Can you explain that and why it's important going forward?
Yeah. So to give a brief definition, right? Lead generation is just generating a lead, getting somebody's contact details. You can qualify it however you want. Most people say email and first name, sometimes a phone number, right? And that's a lead. And that's great. And for a long time in both small businesses and corporate America, they kind of lived by that metric. They were like, I generated 50 leads this week or today, depending on the size of your org. And they're like, that's wonderful. But leads are not all built the same. And now, because of how robust marketing technology is and software, we know that some leads may not actually be generating you the most. And what we've seen to connect it to the profit first methodology is customers who have been marketed to with demand generation, which is more trying to reach as many people with your message as possible within your constraints of your budget, right? And who your ideal customer is, will usually give you the most profitable and least stressed customers. We did this manually before all the softwares existed, where we were like, oh, this campaign's generating $1 leads. This is hyperbole, but $1 leads, and this one's generating $10 leads. So most marketers would say, well, kill the one that's too expensive and keep the one that's $1 leads, scale it up. But we found that the profit was 5 times more on these more expensive leads. And they required more marketing because they're more sophisticated. But the more sophisticated buyer is a more committed buyer because they're really sold before they make a decision with you. So I think it's going to be very important for all businesses, small, large, startups, to start focusing their energy towards marketing demand for their product and why the market needs their product or their methodology or their system versus just saying, hey, I'll give you this guide if you give me your email. We're all a little wise to that now.
And I think especially if you're giving away a freebie, the quality of your leads plummets because people are just there for the freebie. They're not necessarily a good qualified lead. And the other thing, and I know in the world of online marketing, it's all about hype and not, getting everyone to take action and exciting them. What I have found is when you do that, you end up with what I call not fun clients. They got excited, and so they hopped on board, but they weren't committed, or they're not the client who you expect, because all my clients are long-term, so I want you to keep showing up. And if you're not somebody who's going to keep showing up and you flake out and all of that, if I excited you to bring you in, then I'm going to have a bad ongoing client. So we kind of try and do that measurably so that it's people have thought it through and it's not excitement that brings them in the door. Now, some products, it's all about excitement, especially if they're low dollar products. You're just buying whatever and moving on. That's okay. So again, it's knowing your market, knowing what you want, and then marketing to that.
Yeah, that's 100% it is. I think in the world of lead gen and internet marketing, online advertising, leads and sales were so cheap for a while that there was almost this energy of like, oh, if this client doesn't work out, I'll just go get another one, which is a horrible thing to say, right? Because that person invested their time, money, resources, and trust in you. And for you to think, oh, whatever, I'm going to do the bare minimum. And if they want to leave, I'll go find somebody to replace them. That's not how business is traditionally done. And I'm happy to see the market correcting itself because that's just not going to cut it anymore. You need to have real trust with your business, and the business owners have to offer more than they've ever offered before, including marketing and including, financial services, accounting. And I think that's good. We should be improving. That's part of what they're investing in. They're investing in the solution, but they're investing in us having their back. And so we should be doing that.
And that's very true. Well, I thank you for joining us today. If people would like to connect and find you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, if they want to hang out with me, they can go to ajrivera.com. We'll go /Rocky and we'll give them a 90-day marketing plan. It's free. There's no something on it. There's no upsell. It's just free. Here you go. Use this template to market your business for the next 90 days responsibly. Or if they're interested in hiring our firm, they can go to blinkmediaco.com or find me on any of the socials.
And we'll put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Rocky. I really appreciate it, man.
Do you have good metrics that you can use to analyze lead flow, costs, and results? Each stage has their own metrics. The big question is, are the phones ringing? Are the potential customers buying? What's your average sale? How often do they buy? What's the lifetime value of a client? Each of these is a metric that we can make changes to improve your overall profit. You don't need to measure all of these. Someone on your team does, and they can provide you the reports that show you trends and results. Some of this can be automated. Depends on your industry. That is what we call working on your business to create systems that will provide you the data you need in a format you can understand so you can make small changes that result in big profits. Carve out some time to think through this and figure out how to do it in your business.
If you want a done-for-you service, you can hire us as your chief profitability officers. You have your own area of expertise, and maybe you want to spend more of your time doing what you love. We only work with a handful of clients, so they all get our full attention. We work with business owners who have or are growing to $500,000 to $5 million in revenue. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on our calendar for a good fit conversation to see if we're the right people to support you and how we can help you.
Hey, it's Rocky. Don't forget to check out my other podcast, Richer Soul, where we talk about life beyond money and how to live that ultimate life and become a better leader in your company. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Have an abundant and profitable week.